Today's episode of Ham Radio 2.0 is brought to you by MFJ. MFJ sells antennas, analyzers, connectors, meters, amps, and accessories. Extensive research and development goes into the ham radio communication hobby business. New products are constantly on the horizon as MFJ realizes that to stay on top, it must continue to create and innovate. The main source for inspiration for new products comes from MFJ's growing customer base. MFJ receives many letters and phone calls from its clients requesting new equipment to be built. Other requests come in formally, in person, and in hamfests. For anything ham radio related, shop mfjenterprises.com. Hey guys, this is Jason at Ham Radio 2.0. I want to take a few seconds here and tell you about a friend of mine, Dan, KB6NU, Kilo Bravo 6 November uniform, who runs a blog over at kb6nu.com, featuring his no-nonsense study guides for all three levels of amateur radio license, technician, general, and extra, plus several books on CW operation and just an all-around what to do with your amateur radio license. If you're looking to get into amateur radio for the first time, or if you're looking for general information, training for Morse code, or upgrading your license, head over to kb6nu.com and check out Dan's material over there that he writes himself. You won't be disappointed in it, and I guarantee you'll get some really good use out of it. Think kb6nu.com. Okay, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Ham Radio 2.0. Recording this intro from Dayton, 2017, here in Xenia, Ohio. I keep wanting to say Oklahoma, because I'm used to saying Oklahoma. Xenia, Ohio, right outside of Dayton, which is a little town out there, and coming to you from the Greene County Fairgrounds in Xenia. And this episode is going to be somewhere in the high 90s, 96, 78, somewhere in there. And this is Dan Romanchik, if I'm saying his last name correctly. Romanchik, I think is how he pronounced it. Dan Romanchik, KB6NU. He is giving a forum on how to teach a one-day tech class. So basically the gist of it is, you get people who are interested in getting their license, you bring them in for about 6.5 hours one day, teach them a tech class, and then give them the test at the end while they still retain everything in their own memory, and get some new technicians and new licensed amateur radio operators with that method. His theory is that you basically learn by doing on the radio more than you learn from the book anyway, and that's a theory that I pretty much agree with also. I think that's a pretty sound theory. Some school of thought say that it's not that great, but other, say that you should learn it in depth, backwards and forwards. I don't know. That's not really how I learn. So there's two different schools of thought on that. So whichever one works for you, but more licensed amateur radio operators on the air is a good thing. Get someone behind a radio that they have a license to operate and teach them how to operate it, and go from there. So let's take a look at this episode. If you found me on YouTube, go hit up my website, livefromthehamshack.tv. You'll be able to see all 90-something episodes up to date of this one. And we're going to be celebrating 100 episodes here in just a few weeks. So 73, and let's take a look at Dan Romanchik's KB6NU, How to Teach a One-Day Technician Class.
Well, I guess I get started here. So before I get started, this is Mitch WSJ. He's teaching a one-day tech class here tomorrow. So if you know anybody that might want to take it, he's the guy to see. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So do I need the mic? Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. I wasn't looking at you. I think you can hear me.
Back there, yeah.
Okay, so I won't use the mic. That way I don't have to screw around here. So my name's Dan, KB6NU. I've been teaching one-day tech classes for, I don't know, probably 10 years now. And I'm pretty much sold on these kind of classes. What I'm going to tell you about today is how I do it. That's not to say you should do it this way. I'm just going to tell you how I do it, what sort of worked for me. And we can talk at the end of the talk about maybe how you do it, and maybe you got some other ideas too. That would be great. So, and I tell the people this, I basically teach them the answers to the test, okay? But having said that, they can't help but learn something in the class. And you'll see how that kind of works. My class consists of 6 hours, okay? I start at 9 o'clock, we go to 3:30. Right at 3:30, the VE team comes in before they can forget anything, okay? And, that works out. Sometimes if I get a venue that lets me start a little earlier than 9 o'clock, I'll start a little earlier and get another half an hour, mostly for questions and stuff, extra questions. But I can get through the whole thing in 6 hours. But having said that too, I always ask them to read the study guide before the class. Okay, that's very important. Very few people come to the class totally cold and pass the test. In fact, it really gripes me because I'll get some comments from some people that say, "Oh, I knew I should have read that before I came this morning." Stuff like that. So why a one-day tech class? Well, this is the reason. I get people that pass. They're happy at the end of the day. It's wonderful. Another thing you notice about this photo, you noticed I'm the one that has the face for radio. But I do it for this. Really, I do it because of the students. There's a big thing in some people talk in ham radio about quote unquote growing the ranks, right? And they'll say, "Oh, it's great that you've created, gotten so many people licensed, blah blah blah." I don't do it for that. I do it because people want to get a license. They want to enjoy ham radio, and if I can help them enjoy ham radio, that's my motivation for it. Not growing the ranks or blah blah blah. So why might you want to teach a one-day tech class instead of the quote-unquote more traditional 8-session, 6-session, 5-session, whatever kind of class you and your club may have taught in the past? It's easier on the students and instructors. It's one day, okay? They don't have to make a multi-week commitment, either the instructors or the students, right? And my whole philosophy on this, and I get criticized a lot about it, okay? People will say, "Oh, you're not teaching them anything, blah, blah, blah." And I'll say, well, no, because the real learning, right, comes afterwards. It comes after you get your license, and it's learned by doing. And if you don't have a license, how can you do anything, right? So that's my philosophy here. And, sure, there's going to be some number, maybe even a high percentage, that never do more than get a license, but that's up to them. That's not up to you. After you've gone, taught them and they've got their license, it's sort of up to them to and I tell them that. I said, you're not really getting a ham radio license here. You're getting a license to learn. It's a lifelong license to learn, right? I mean, we've all been in ham radio a long time, and we're still learning stuff. That's one of the beauties of the hobby, right? So I try and really stress that with them, that they're getting a license to learn. Flip side, this is on the next slide. But the other point I wanted to make is, I tell everybody in the class once they pass, even if they don't pass, to consider me their Elmer, right? Some of them may have come into the class, just with a vague interest in ham radio even. Well, as we know, people need Elmers. So I say, consider me your Elmer. If you got any questions about anything, call me, email me, whatever, and I'll help you, or find somebody else that can help you. And most people don't take me up on that offer, but some do, and that's how I work that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the differences between the two. Like I say, some people say, "Well, you're not teaching them anything." Well, my point of view is, a traditional 8-week class is not teaching them that much more anyway, right? An 8-week class might give them 16 hours of instruction versus the 6 I'm giving them. But how much can you really teach in that extra 10 hours? You're not going to make electrical engineers out of them in 10 hours. It took me 5 years to get through engineering school. So I don't think the extra time makes that much of a difference. People say they don't learn anything. Well, they do learn something in my class, and I'll give you an example of this later on. And I often get the comment after the class, you know, Dan, I read through the book, and you know, I got some of the answers and all, but your explanation of whatever topic it is really hit home with me. Now I understand it. So I'm, you know, even though it's a short time, they are learning something. And no, or at least very few dropouts. So, you know, in a traditional class, you'll get people, you know, you're never going to end with this, or very rarely anyway, end with the same number of students you started with. In a one-day tech class, you usually do. And I say usually because one time I start teaching, you know, so and I'll cover this more later too, but I get started right at 9 o'clock and go to like 10, 15, 10:30 and take a break. Well, I noticed one guy was dropping off, and he actually left at the break. So I did actually get one dropout. I asked him, and yeah, I knew the guy. I said, well, what's the story? He said, okay, kind of a late night, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, well, come back next time. And he eventually did, and he's now a ham as well. So you do get one drop, you get some dropouts every once in a while, but it's very rare. So let's talk about where you might hold these classes. Finding a venue, that's sort of the first important point, right? All these places are possibilities. Public libraries, maker spaces, you got a Red Cross, they've usually got meeting rooms, churches, a lot of clubs meet in churches. Currently, I'm teaching in the public library. Public libraries I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Public libraries have some real nice spaces, and they give me the space for free. Our library has a kind of a quote unquote maker program, and it's sort of part of that maker program. And as part of that program, they give me the room for free. Maker spaces, we have another place in Ann Arbor that's a maker space. That would have been my second choice. And in fact, I taught actually a more kind of traditional general class course there in a maker space this winter. Town halls, I'm going to be teaching a class in Sterling Heights, Michigan in June, in about a month. And it's composed of their CERT team, some police officers. And I think they were going to try and get a few firefighters in there as well. That was, you know, they provided the town hall for that, the meeting room in the town hall. So that's a good place. Red Cross, if you're affiliated with the Red Cross, you know, that's the place. And churches. So the first thing you do want to do is find the venue. So here's some considerations. You want to make sure it can accommodate the number of students you expect. So one time I secured a space actually it was the local science museum, and they said, well, you can use the conference room. Well, the conference room just couldn't hold like even 10 people, and we were just really crammed in there. And so that wasn't a very good space. Yeah, that was a real cram. We were really crammed in. The room has to be available from 8:30 or 9 a.m. to at least 6 p.m. That gives them, you know, it gives the VEs time to do their thing. And if you have a big crowd, like the last course I taught was 2 weeks ago, we had 23 people. It took the VEs, you know, an hour and a half to process all those tests. So you want to make sure it's available all day. And you know, we were kind of stretching it here because the library closed at 6 p.m. and we just got it all finished just in time. And you should make sure they have a chalkboard or a whiteboard. Like for some reason, which escapes me, the Ann Arbor library rooms don't have a chalkboard or a whiteboard. So I have to bring my own in, which is not a problem. I mean, I have one, and it's not a real hassle to haul it in there, but especially since they're giving me the room for free. But you want to make sure. You don't want to, like today, I walked in, right, and there was no computer here, right? So it was a good thing I came like 45 minutes early to check on that. So before you teach a class somewhere, you want to go check on that room. Make sure, you know, what you thought was going to be in. Because, for example, they might have had a chalkboard or something and then taken it out, or, you know, all these things can happen. And if you can, you know, double check, then you can avoid that avoid some unpleasant surprises. So, scheduling the class. What I do is I have 3 classes a year in Ann Arbor. That's my market, if you will. I do them in January, May, and September. In January, I usually do it at the University of Michigan. You know, there's lots of students there. They have a pretty active club now, and I like to think that I'm part of that because I teach a class there. I get a pretty big class in January. In May and September, are the ones I do at the library. And I take the summer off. I don't do it at all during the summertime.
Do the kids get any credit for that?
I think that at least there used to be one of the teachers who was teaching a satellite communications course gives some extra credit if they get a license. I'm not sure of any other arrangements. But they have a real...
Yeah, we have a STEM high school in our area that has a similar kind of thing if they get their license.
Okay, that's
so
good.
Approaching some STEM high schools. And,
Yep. Yeah, that would be good. The exact date always depends on VE availability. You know, you got to have VEs to administer the test. So I'm real fortunate in Ann Arbor. If I avoid the dates of their regularly scheduled VE tests, they're usually more than happy to show up at my one-day tech classes. I seriously, I'm really lucky about that because I think that's a real snag in a lot of places, especially if you live in a place maybe that's not quite so populated, right? But in Ann Arbor, we have at least, I'd say, a dozen people who have VE credentials, and getting 4 to show up on any particular day is usually not too big a problem. So then you got to find students. Where do you find the students? All these places. Local ham clubs. And by that I mean, you know, in your metro area, right? When I get ready to do a class, I email all the clubs in Southeast Michigan. Your section manager. Always inform your section manager when you're having a class. He or she may publish like news from the section manager. They'll include a notice in there about your class, and you might get some students that way. If you're not already an ARRL registered instructor, you might want to do that. Then you can put your class on the ARRL website. I don't know about a lot, but I get some people from that path too. I think this is a big one. I think if you have local maker groups in your area, you should approach them because you know, they may or may not know that much about ham radio, but I think they'd all be interested in it, or a good percentage of them would be interested.
I don't know what a maker group is.
Okay, so these guys now, they call them makers. They're doing all kinds of things. Like like they might do machining. They might be guys that program Arduinos. They might be, you know, it's kind of a real hodgepodge. At least in Ann Arbor, it's kind of a real hodgepodge, you know. Where do you live?
Near St. Louis.
Oh, I'm sure St. Louis has one. Just when you get home, Google St. Louis makers or St. Louis maker spaces. Well, some are, some aren't. So in Ann Arbor, we have several things. First, there's the library, right? That's sort of less organized. But there's a group called the AHA Group, All Hands Active, and they're an actual 501c nonprofit. They have like their own quote-unquote clubhouse, but they have equipment there. You know, they have a 3D printer. They have, I think, some kind of CNC machine. They've got, the latest talk on their mailing list was a planer. They got a planer for planing boards. You know, just stuff like that. There's a whole wide variety. Then we have actually a commercial business called Maker Works, and they will rent. They have even more equipment, and they'll rent that equipment out on an hourly basis, or you can be a member and use it whenever. But they have a lot of equipment. They have you know, like punch presses and sewing machines and, you know, all kinds of different stuff. And I'm sure in St. Louis there's 1 or 2 or 3 of them. So just Google that. I'm sure you'll find. Skywarn search and rescue, all these emergency communications, that makes up a big part of the class, a big part of my classes.
Yeah, I'm from the Seattle area.
Yeah.
And the feed from the CERT organization into it, just huge.
Yeah, yeah.
Just huge.
Yeah.
We're able to have half of our classes are CERT.
Right. And in June, I'm about a month from today, I'm teaching a class specifically for the CERT group in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And I guess they're going to try and get a couple of police guys and firefighters in there too, but it's going to be mostly the CERT group there. And sometimes they might even approach you to do that kind of thing, a particular class for them, once you sort of build up your reputation. So, an event calendar. So get it listed on your local event calendar. If you still got a newspaper in your area, submit. I know submit it there. But so in Ann Arbor, we have a local magazine called the Ann Arbor Observer. They have an online event calendar, so you can submit it, and it gets listed on the online event calendar. And that's always a way to get more students. I get students that way. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, there's all kinds of different ways to do this, and try and take advantage of all these different kind of ways. Another thing that hits me, your local library has a bulletin board. Put it on there. Make one of those, make a flyer with the, tear off phone numbers, you'd be surprised. You'd just be surprised at where you can find students. And what I do is I create a mailing list, right? So anyone that's ever contacted me and shown any possible amount of interest in attending one of these classes, I put on my mailing list. And a month or two before I give a class, I email the whole list again. And on that list are like those emergency communications groups and the local ham club newsletter editors and all that. But again, just random people that email me get put on that list, and they get my email, and I leave them on that list for at least 5 years. In fact, just recently I kind of deleted some that were older than that because I figured by then they probably wouldn't come again. But excuse me, in the last class I had a guy come that had been on the list for 3 years. So by keeping in touch with them over the years, they'll come. Encourage your friends to refer students. I get a lot of referrals that way. And again, I tell them, I say, well, have your friend email me. I'll put them on the list. And when they email me, I send them like some basic information. And what I even do is, I kind of sometimes discourage them from taking the class. They'll say, so they'll say, oh, I've wanted to be in ham for a long time and blah, blah, blah. I'll say, well, okay, my next class is on September 23rd, but you really don't need to take the class. Just download my study guide and call me if you have questions. And we have regularly scheduled test sessions in Ann Arbor every second Saturday of the month. You'd be surprised how fast, and as you take online practice tests, you'd be surprised how soon you'll be ready to take the real test. So I even kind of discourage them sometimes from taking my classes. Right? And it's not discouraging from taking the classes, I'm discouraging them from waiting, right? Because if they wait, then the interest wanes, right? So but anyway, that's that. I put the ham clubs and MCOM groups on the mailing list. But this is the biggie here. I mean, this really is the best thing that I've done as far as getting people to come to my classes. Choosing a study guide. Of course, you don't need anything but my study guide. And I'm a little embarrassed about this blatant self-promotion, but my study guide really is written for this type of class, honest to God. And in fact, I don't have like any real teacher materials per se. I've got a printout of my study guide, and I just walk through it from the first chapter to the last chapter. I mean, it really fits the the course format. And the PDF version is free, so your students don't even have to buy anything. They can download the PDF study guide for free.
How many pages downloaded?
It's about 45. Did you have a question? No? Okay. So, and it's like I say, it's free. You know, totally free, and it's not a starter version or like anything. There's no advertising in it. Although I was thinking of putting advertising in it, but there's still no advertising in it.
It's okay if you want to hold this question till later,
Yeah.
but I wonder if you'd make some comments on why you think some of the other study guides that are available, like the ARRL book, would not be good for.
I'll give you a quote from somebody who emailed me. I got an email recently, and this isn't the first time I got a similar comment, but people have said to me, they say, Dan, your study guide covered in 2 paragraphs what it took the ARRL study guide 2 pages to cover. And to me, that's exactly what I was trying to do, right? It's exactly what I was trying to do. And why is that? Well, if you have to read 2 pages, and you're a newcomer, right? I mean, we're all old-comers, right? But if you're a newcomer, you can get lost in that easily. And I don't call it the no-nonsense study guide for nothing. There's no nonsense in there. I get right to the point. I explain why the answer is what it is, and people seem to respond to that. I'll give you another joke, and this just happened to me last night. So I'm at the 4 Days of May vendor night, right? And sitting at the table across from me having a beer was Ed Hare, who is the lab manager at the ARRL, right? At the end of the night, he comes over to me and he buys one of my technician class study guides. And he says to me, we got a new person at the ARRL. She's having trouble understanding the stuff from reading the ARRL study guide. Maybe this will help her out. And I said, you know what? I know it's going to help her out. And so it's like, I don't know if you can take that as a testimonial by Ed Hare, but that's a true story. That's really a true story.
How much for the printed version?
$15. And it's cheaper. It's cheaper than the ARRL book. Yeah, remember the old Mad magazine, $15, cheap?
Cheap.
Okay, but that's not to say you shouldn't use the other study guide. If you're already using like the Gordon West book in your classes or whatever, and you don't want to change, use those. I'm sure those will be okay. One time a guy said to me, aside from Gordon West, you have the best study guides. And I said, well, I guess if I got to be second to somebody, Gordon West is the guy to be second to. But, like I said, if you're connected to the Wi-Fi here, I don't know how you connect, but you could even download it right now for free. Just go to my website, kb6nu.com. Yeah, there you go. He's even got it on his phone now.
Dan, is the PDF version the same?
It's the exact same thing. Teaching the class. And this is kind of ironic, right, because I'm using PowerPoints. But I don't use PowerPoints, and I'm really dead set against it. And why? Well, a couple of reasons. I think PowerPoints put people to sleep. If you do PowerPoints well, which so very few people do, they're fine. But most people don't do it. They try to cram too much onto a PowerPoint slide, and I think they just put people to sleep. Not only that, when I'm teaching a class, I'm always moving around, right? I'm moving around, and again, I think that helps keep people stay awake. Not only that, I can watch the students. I can see how well they're actually getting the material. If I'm getting a lot of blank stares, I'll try and explain something in a little different way. And if they're staring at PowerPoints and I'm reading off a PowerPoint, you're not going to get that kind of interaction. So. In fact, I thought I was going to have to do this talk without PowerPoints because until like about 10 minutes before the class started, there was no computer in here. And so I thought I was going to have to do it without the PowerPoint. I said, well, that's kind of ironic because one of my slides is no PowerPoint. I tell lots of stories, right? I mean, I've been in ham almost 50 years. I got lots of stories. And when something comes up, a topic, I usually have a story to tell about that topic. And in fact, I got a video here about one of the stories I tell. Another funny story about this, when I got back on the air, I put up this 40-meter dipole in my backyard. I put my antenna analyzer on it, and tuned it up, it was working great. I start calling CQ, right? This is Saturday afternoon. First thing that happens, my wife comes down and says, "What the heck are you doing?" I said, I put up the antenna, I'm calling CQ. Says, "You're opening and closing the garage door." Somehow, and so what happened? What happened here? I know, it was hilarious, really. So here's like my house, right? And the antenna was running from the corner of the house out to a tree in the backyard. And the garage doors are here. There's 2 garage doors. And I was only opening this one. So there's a switch plate here, and the switch is connected to each garage door opener. Well, enough RF energy was coupling from the antenna into this wire so that and you know, these garage door openers have no like filtering on their inputs. So enough RF was coupling in there to make it think someone was pushing the button. And it was opening and closing every time I hit the key. So what was the solution? The solution was to put this ferrite choke right here, and that prevented any RF from you know, that was being picked up by this wire from getting into the garage door opener. Problem solved. So that's kind of typical of a story I tell during the class. And by now, you know, I got a million of them. Who's that guy? I don't know. Henny Youngman, I think. I got a million of them. And I mean, that story really hits home. That tells the students what a ferrite choke does, right? Jimmy Durante, okay. I knew it
Took me a second.
I'll show you another thing here. This is kind of, this was taken, like I said, when I taught a class in January 2016 at the University of Michigan. Another little tip is make these charts ahead of time. That way you can do a nice job of drawing the diagram. You don't have to take up class time to do it. And I just tape them up. I bring a roll of masking tape, I tape them up. But then again, and then too, you see how I use the whiteboard. So I'm always drawing something on the whiteboard. And you know, I try to make the stories funny, right? I mean, you know, that's again, that's the part of my shtick, you know. Especially the first time you have to watch the time, right? You only got 6 hours, 6.5 hours. Whatever time you've allotted. So you got to keep moving, you know. Let the student ask questions, but don't let them bog you down. I have the last class 2 weeks ago. I had one student. She sat right in the front. She was a young woman, and so I didn't really want to discourage her. But she was like one question after another. And in fact, my job was done for me. Instead of me discouraging her, the guy behind her said, you know, we're trying to all learn here. Let's just keep moving. And so she kind of got the hint. And she wasn't even really asking like real questions. She was asking kind of dopey questions, you know, like it's just sort of making talk, you know, just talking. And there was another guy in the room doing the same, and they were sitting right next to each other, in fact. So they both got the idea, and we were able to proceed, and we got done in time. I take 2 short breaks, one at like 10:30. Then we have a half an hour for lunch, and then we have another short break in the afternoon. And what I tell people too is bring a bag lunch. You know, if you got to go out and get lunch, you can go. Especially some of these places are not in an area where you can buy lunch easily. You know, you're going to be a half an hour just getting to the place to buy a lunch, and by the time you get back, we've already started. And I don't wait. I start. Because we got, you know, everybody's, so I tell them to bring a bag lunch. Not only that, I say, look, I'm bringing a bag lunch. At the break, you can ask me questions. So that works out. The ones that are really interested will do that. They'll bring the bag lunch and we'll talk about ham radio during lunch. So that works out. So, you go through this, you go through all that, and they take the test, and like I say, I get about a 90% pass rate, between 85 and 90%. Then this one last Saturday, 20 out of 23, which works out to like 87%. That's very typical. One guy, like I said, he didn't read the study guide at all. You could tell. He didn't say that, but you could tell. And then some people you'll get in the classes that just aren't suited to ham radio, right? Either they just don't have the interest, or maybe they don't have the technical background really that you want. So very rarely will you get 100%. And I used to kind of feel bad about that, especially when I used to charge a small amount, and I'll talk about that a little bit here too. But especially when I used to charge a little bit of money. That's not my fault, right? I mean, I said before and I should have wrote this up there too. Before the class, I sent them at least 2 emails. One, thanking them for inquiring, and then I tell them I put them on my list. And then about a week before the class, I sent them an email with all the logistical information. The exact time it's going to be, the address of the venue, what to bring for the VE session, photo ID, whatever. Tell them to bring the bag lunch, and remind them to read the study guide before coming to the class. So I do that all about a week beforehand. So the point here is, with all this information, I don't feel bad at all if they fail, because I've told them everything, right? So that's that. So then the next question is, what do you do after you created all these texts, right? And this is, to be honest, this is where I haven't done so well. Okay, we don't have a good program in place. But like I said before, one thing I do is I say, consider me your Elmer, and ask me questions, do whatever. A lot of those guys have done that, and I've got lots of guys that were in my classes that are now active ham radio operators, having lots of fun with ham radio. So I feel good about that. I just ran across this article. If you're a registered ARRL instructor, you can sign up for this email newsletter called Radio Waves, and it's for instructors of ARRL registered instructors. And there's an article in here by this guy Tim Bush, N0CKR, and he suggested a series of mini classes on different aspects of ham radio, like programming your radio, multimeter 101, soldering 101, all the real basic stuff. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to try and get this started in Ann Arbor, something along those lines. Maybe do it on a Saturday morning, and at the makerspace. We were talking about makerspaces. I think the makerspace would be a great place to do this. So there's that. Some groups actually have done this, and they've been pretty successful at it. I don't know what else to say about that. Anybody here do something like that? Yeah. Excuse me?
Teach classes?
No, like do these follow-up kind of classes.
Yes.
You guys do that?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can talk to you too about that. See what kind of success you've had. So if you want like some more information about this, I've got this on this blog. I do a blog. If you haven't read my blog, and I sometimes joke I have the #1 rated ham radio blog. It's because if you go to Google and type in a ham radio blog or amateur radio blog, I usually come up #1. So Google thinks I'm #1. But I have all the same information I've talked about here in this particular blog post. And I just blogged about this program to help new hams based on that guy's article. And there's some discussion going on there about other different classes. Another thing you might want to do is join this Yahoo group. This is a mailing list for ham radio instructors. and we talk about different things. It's a really pretty low traffic group. You won't get deluged with emails, and there's no spam at all. And every once in a while, I'll send an email to the list just to generate a little activity on it. But you know, it's a good it's a pretty good high signal to noise ratio, as we say in ham radio. And I think that's it. Anyone else? Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, several. What is the average age of the audience you play into?
Well, so that's a good question. I mean, I get a real mix. I mean, I've had kids as young as 10. In the last class, I had an elderly gentleman. He must have been in his 80s. I get men. I get women. I get a real mix. And you know, there's anytime we have Hamvention, everybody says, "Oh yeah, it's just a bunch of old guys, right?" But I don't get that in my classes, and I think it's not right to stereotype ham radio based on these kind of events. These kind of events do draw those kind of hams, but there's lots of other hams out there that don't come to these events that are doing other things with ham radio. You know, all those makers, for example. You know, those makers probably aren't going to come here and look at DX60Bs out in the flea market. They don't care about that stuff. They want to fly a drone, or they want to do some mesh networking, or you know, whatever. So and these kind of events, the Hamvention doesn't really cater to that at all. You know.